Daniel Carter sat in the dimly lit chamber, his sharp eyes scanning the luxurious interior of the alien palace. The walls shimmered with a faint blue glow, an effect of the rare minerals embedded in the stone. He had been in countless war zones, fought against mercenaries and rebel factions. But this was different. Across the room, two figures stood watching him. Zara and Vena, twin alien noblewomen of the Zarkai dynasty, were unlike anything Carter had seen before. Their smooth violet skin, glowing silver eyes, and tall, elegant figures made them look almost ethereal. Despite their beauty, Carter could sense the tension in their posture. They were being hunted. A tall alien advisor stepped forward. Lord Silvar, a high-ranking official, cleared his throat. "Human, we require a protector. Our enemies are many, and our own guards have failed us. We need someone capable." His gaze was cold, measuring. Carter leaned back in his chair, unimpressed. "Sounds like a dangerous job. What makes you think I'm interested?" Vena smirked, tilting her head. "Because we are willing to pay you more than you've ever been offered." Zoira, the more serious of the two, added, "And because you are the only human we know with a reputation for surviving the impossible." Carter had heard these kinds of promises before, but he had also heard of the Zarkai dynasty's enemies, ruthless warlords, assassins, and traitors who would do anything to claim power. If he accepted this job, it wouldn't be simple. Yet, something in the twins' eyes, a silent plea behind their strong words, made him pause. Before he could answer, the room suddenly went dark. The air filled with the sharp scent of ozone. An attack. Carter didn't hesitate. Years of training kicked in. He grabbed the twins and pulled them down just as an explosion rocked the chamber. A laser bolt sizzled past his head, burning a hole through the chair he had been sitting in just moments before. The palace guards scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. Shadows flickered along the walls. Stealth assassins. Carter drew his sidearm, fired 3 quick shots, and heard a grunt as one attacker fell. But more were coming. Zira and Vena pressed against him, their breathing sharp but controlled. "They found us faster than we expected," Zira muttered. "Yeah, no kidding," Carter growled. He spun, slamming an assassin into the wall, disarming him with a brutal twist of the wrist. A metallic voice echoed through the chamber. "Surrender the twins, and we will let you live." Carter smirked. "Yeah, that's funny, because I was just about to say the same thing to you." Without warning, he lunged forward, gun blazing. The fight had only just begun. Carter moved fast. His instincts screamed danger, and he knew one wrong step would be his last. The assassins were quick, but he was quicker. He fired 2 more shots, dropping another attacker before rolling behind a stone pillar for cover. The palace guards finally reacted, engaging the intruders in combat, but Carter could see they were outmatched. These assassins weren't ordinary killers. They moved like ghosts, their black armor blending with the shadows. "Stay low," Carter ordered, pushing Zira and Vena behind the cover of a large metal table. The twins didn't argue, their silver eyes scanning the battlefield. Despite their noble status, Carter could tell they weren't helpless. They were studying the enemy, looking for weaknesses. Another laser bolt sizzled past his ear, leaving a burning scar on the stone wall. Carter cursed under his breath. "These guys don't mess around." Zura's voice was calm despite the chaos. "They're elite hunters, hired by our enemies. They won't stop until we're dead." Carter smirked. "Then let's make sure they don't leave this palace alive." Vena suddenly pointed behind him. Incoming. Carter spun just in time to block an assassin's blade with his forearm. Pain shot through him as the vibro knife cut through his armor, slicing his skin. Gritting his teeth, he grabbed the attacker's wrist, twisting it until he heard a sharp crack. The assassin screamed, but Carter didn't stop. He drove his knee into the alien's gut, sending him crashing to the ground. More assassins rushed in, overwhelming the guards. Carter knew they were losing this fight. "We need an escape route," Zira said, pressing a glowing button on her wrist device. A holographic map of the palace appeared. "There's a secret passage behind that wall." Carter didn't hesitate. He grabbed a fallen guard's plasma rifle and blasted the wall open, revealing the narrow tunnel. "Move," he shouted. The twins ran first, and Carter followed, covering their retreat with rapid gunfire. He dropped 2 more assassins, but they kept coming. As he reached the passage, a laser bolt grazed his shoulder, burning through his jacket. He hissed in pain but didn't stop. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing them in darkness. The only sound was their heavy breathing. "We should be safe here," Vena whispered. "For now," Zyra corrected. She turned to Carter, eyes narrowing. "You fought well. Better than most of our guards." Carter wiped the blood from his arm. "Yeah, well, I don't like losing." Vena chuckled, despite the danger. "Good, because this fight is far from over." Carter sighed, glancing at his burned shoulder. He had only just taken the job, and already people were trying to kill him. "This is gonna be a long mission," he muttered. And deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The hidden passage was cold and narrow, with dim blue lights flickering along the walls. Carter walked ahead, his rifle raised, scanning for any threats. Behind him, Zyra and Vena moved silently, their breathing steady despite the danger. "How long does this tunnel go?" Carter asked, his voice echoing in the confined space. Zyra checked her wrist device. "It leads to an old storage bay. From there, we can escape the palace unseen." Vena sighed. "If the assassins haven't already blocked the way." Carter smirked. "Then we'll just have to punch through." As they moved deeper, the silence became unsettling. Carter's instincts told him something wasn't right. He signaled for the twins to stop. Something was ahead. A faint sound, metal scraping against stone. Carter spun around just in time. A shadowy figure lunged from the darkness, a blade flashing toward his throat. Clang. Zyra blocked the attack with her own weapon, a sleek energy dagger humming with blue light. She twisted, her movements swift and precise, forcing the assassin back. Vena grabbed Carter's arm, pulling him aside as another attacker dropped from the ceiling. Carter reacted instantly, slamming his rifle into the alien's chest, sending him stumbling. Before the assassin could recover, Carter fired. A bright plasma bolt struck him square in the chest, knocking him to the ground. Zyra finished her opponent just as quickly, flipping her dagger in her hand before driving it into the assassin's side. The alien gasped before falling limp. The tunnel fell silent again. Carter exhaled, shaking his head. "I thought you were nobles." Zyra wiped her blade, her expression calm. "We are, but we were trained to fight. We can't always rely on others to protect us." Vena grinned, impressed, human. Carter chuckled, shouldering his rifle. "Yeah, a little." They continued through the passage, more alert now. When they finally reached the storage bay, it was deserted. Large crates and broken machinery littered the space. A single ship sat in the center, its engines cold. "That's our way out," Zyra said, pointing. But before they could move, the main doors suddenly slammed open. A squad of armed mercenaries stormed in, weapons raised. Carter cursed under his breath. They were waiting for us. A tall alien stepped forward, his golden armor gleaming. "Lord Selvar." "Well, well," Selvar said, his voice dripping with amusement. "You're a persistent one, Carter, but this is where your journey ends." Carter's grip tightened on his rifle. Beside him, Zyra and Vena exchanged a quick glance. They weren't going to surrender. Vena smirked. "Funny. I was just about to say the same to you." Carter raised his gun. The fight wasn't over yet. Carter didn't hesitate. He dove behind a crate, dragging Vena down with him as laser fire erupted across the storage bay. Zyra rolled behind a broken engine, drawing her energy dagger. The air smelled like burning metal as plasma bolts scorched the walls. "Stay down," Carter growled, peeking out and firing 2 quick shots. One mercenary collapsed instantly, but the others kept advancing. Vena smirked. What? No clever plan this time. Carter gritted his teeth, working on it. Zelvar stood near the entrance, arms crossed, watching the fight like it amused him. He wasn't even bothering to join in. Zyra's voice came through the comms. We need to get to the ship, but the controls are locked. I need time to override them. Carter sighed. Of course you do. Vena tapped his shoulder. So, stall them. He reloaded his rifle. Stall them. Carter leaped from cover, firing as he ran. His shots were precise, hitting one mercenary in the leg and another in the chest. The others ducked for cover, giving Zyra the opening she needed. She sprinted toward the ship, her fingers already working on the control panel. Zelvar sighed dramatically. You're only delaying the inevitable, Carter. He raised his hand, and 2 heavily armored enforcers stepped forward, massive pulse cannons in their arms. Carter barely had time to react. The first fired a blast that shook the entire room, sending crates flying. The force knocked him off his feet, pain jolting through his ribs. Vena gasped. Carter. He coughed, pushing himself up. I'm fine. Just really annoyed. Zyra's voice came through again. Almost there. Hold them off. Carter wiped blood from his mouth. You got it. The armored enforcers advanced, their heavy footsteps echoing. Carter grabbed a fallen grenade, pulled the pin, and hurled it between them. Boom! The explosion sent both flying, smoke filling the air. Carter used the distraction to rush back toward the ship. Vena met him halfway, panting. Zyra. The ship's engines roared to life. Zyra appeared at the ramp, waving. Get in. Zelvar snarled. Stop them. But it was too late. Carter grabbed Vena's hand, pulling her inside as Zyra sealed the doors. The ship lifted off, shaking as gunfire bounced off its hull. Through the window, Carter saw Zelvar watching them escape, his face twisted in fury. Zyra collapsed into the pilot's seat, breathing hard. We made it. Vena grinned. Nice flying, sister. Carter exhaled, sinking into his seat. Yeah, great. But something tells me Zelvar won't let this go. Zyra's expression darkened. No, he won't. And Carter knew the real fight was just beginning. The ship hurtled through space, leaving the burning palace behind. Carter sat near the cockpit, checking his wounds. His shoulder ached, his ribs throbbed, but they were alive. That was what mattered. Zyra piloted with precision, her fingers dancing over the controls. Vena, sitting beside her, turned to Carter with a smirk. Well, that was fun. What's next? A warlord's fortress. A bounty hunter ambush. Carter exhaled. Let's just get somewhere safe first. Zyra nodded. There's a space station in the Black Void. A lawless sector. We can disappear there for a while. Carter frowned. Disappear? No. Zelvar won't stop hunting you. We need to make him think you're dead. Vena raised an eyebrow. I like the sound of this. Zyra glanced at Carter. What's the plan? He leaned forward. We split up. One of you goes with me. The other leaves on this ship as a decoy. We make it look like you're escaping in different directions. Zelvar will have to choose which one to chase. Vena's grin widened. I really like this plan. Zyra sighed. It's risky. Carter shrugged. Everything about this job is risky. After a moment, Zyra nodded. All right. I'll take the ship. Vena goes with you. Vena's eyes lit up. Finally, some quality time with our favorite human. Carter smirked. Don't get too excited. They landed on a remote moon, a barren rock with nothing but caves and dust. Zyra prepared the ship for takeoff, while Carter and Vena grabbed supplies. As Zyra powered up the engines, Carter turned to her. Make it look real. Blow something up. Leave debris behind. Zyra gave him a sharp look. I know what I'm doing, Carter. Vena nudged him. You worry too much. Carter sighed. Yeah, well, I like to keep my clients alive. With a final glance, Zyra lifted off, vanishing into the sky. Carter and Vena watched from a ridge. Minutes later, explosions erupted in the upper atmosphere, fake debris scattering into space. Vena exhaled. Dan, she's good. Carter's comm device beeped. Zyra's voice came through, steady but urgent. Bad news. Silver didn't fall for it. Carter stiffened. What? I think he knew we'd try this. He sent forces after both of us. I have ships on my tail. Vena tensed. And us. A new sound filled the air, low rumbling, distant but growing closer. Carter cursed under his breath. We've got company. From the horizon, armored dropships descended, kicking up dust. Vena smirked. Guess it's time for some fun. Carter checked his rifle. Yeah, fun. And just like that, the hunt was on. The dust swirled as armored dropships descended onto the barren moon. Carter and Vena crouched behind a jagged rock formation, their eyes locked on the enemy forces marching toward them. Heavy boots stomped against the ground, sending vibrations through the earth. Vena glanced at Carter, her silver eyes gleaming with excitement. So, what's the plan? Charge in, guns blazing. Carter sighed, checking his rifle. That's a great way to die. We need cover. We move through the caves and pick them off one by one. Vena pouted. You humans are always so tactical. Carter smirked. And yet, we're still alive. The mercenaries spread out, scanning the terrain. One of them barked an order in an alien language. They were looking for heat signatures. Carter grabbed Vena's hand. Move. Now. They sprinted toward the cave entrance, staying low. Laser fire erupted behind them, scorching the ground where they had just stood. Vena gasped as Carter shoved her inside the rocky tunnel, then turned and fired 2 quick shots. One mercenary collapsed. Another ducked for cover. Inside the cave, the air was damp and cool. The walls were lined with glowing minerals, casting a faint blue light. Carter led the way, weaving through narrow passages. Vena's breathing was uneven. That was close. Carter pressed a hand against his side, wincing. Blood trickled down his ribs. The wound from earlier had reopened. Vena noticed immediately. Carter, you're hurt. I'll live. She stepped in front of him, blocking his path. Sit. Carter hesitated, but his vision blurred for a second. Damn it. He lowered himself onto a rock, gripping his side. Vena knelt beside him, pulling out a small medical kit from her belt. Hold still. Carter chuckled weakly. Didn't know princesses carried medkits. Vena smiled as she carefully cleaned his wound. We're not just princesses. We were trained to survive. Her hands were warm, gentle but firm, as she wrapped a bandage around his torso. Carter watched her closely. Despite her playful nature, she was serious now, focused. For the first time, Carter saw the worry in her eyes. You should be resting, Vena murmured. Not running into battles for us. Carter smirked. It's my job. She shook her head. No, you're doing more than that. For a moment, the cave was silent. The only sound was their breathing, the faint drip of water somewhere in the distance. Vena's eyes met his. I don't want you to die because of us. Carter's chest tightened, not from pain, but from something else. Something he wasn't ready to admit. Before he could respond, shouts echoed from the cave entrance. The mercenaries were closing in. Vena grabbed her blaster. Guess we talk later. Carter pushed himself up, ignoring the pain. Yeah, if we survive. And with that, the fight began again. The cave echoed with the sound of blaster fire. Carter led Vena through the winding passages, moving fast to stay ahead of the mercenaries. His body ached, his wound throbbed, but he forced himself to keep going. Every step felt heavier, every breath shorter. But he wasn't about to give up now. Are you sure this leads out? Vena asked, panting. Not sure of anything, Carter replied. But it beats standing still. Behind them, the mercenaries were closing in, their footsteps echoing through the tunnels. Carter and Vena had taken down a few of them, but the main force was still on their trail. Carter knew they couldn't keep running forever. As they reached a fork in the cave, Carter hesitated. He studied the two dark paths before them. Both seemed equally risky, but one had a faint draft of fresh air. He chose that one. This way. Vena followed, but she glanced over her shoulder, her expression tense. Zara would have handled this better. Carter shot her a quick look. She's not here. We are. Focus. They pressed on, the light growing dimmer. The air grew colder and the walls narrowed. Carter realized this path wasn't just a tunnel. It was a natural fissure in the rock. They had to squeeze through at points, and each step made them more vulnerable. Suddenly, Carter heard it. A voice. Not a mercenary's voice, but something familiar. Carter, it called softly, echoing through the cave. Vena stopped. Is that Zira? Carter frowned. Can't be. But the voice called again, closer now. Carter, it's me. I'm trapped. Help me. Vena looked at him, her eyes wide. She must have circled back. Maybe she's in trouble. Carter hesitated. Something didn't feel right. The voice was calm, too calm for someone in danger. No, Carter said firmly. It's a trap. Vena froze. You don't know that. I do, Carter insisted. Keep moving. Before she could respond, a shadow emerged from the passage ahead. It wasn't Zyra. It was Lord Selvar. Ah, Carter. Selvar said smoothly, his golden armor gleaming in the dim light. You've been such a nuisance. Carter raised his rifle, but Selvar only smirked. Behind him, mercenaries appeared, their weapons aimed. Vena's eyes widened. How did you? Selvar cut her off. It's simple. I was never chasing Zyra. I was chasing you too. She was the bait. Carter's grip tightened on his weapon. So it's true. You sold them out. Selvar laughed. Oh, Carter, you're so naive. I didn't sell them out. I simply chose the winning side. Vena stepped closer to Carter. What do we do now? Carter scanned the situation quickly. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and cornered. But Carter never went down without a fight. We make them regret it, he said, a defiant grin on his face. And just like that, the battle began again. Carter barely had time to process what Selvar said before chaos erupted. Blaster fire lit up the cave. Carter pulled Vena down behind a rock, the air around them sizzling with energy bolts. Stay low, he shouted. Selvar's laughter echoed above the noise. You can't hide forever, human. Your stubbornness is amusing, but it's over. Carter muttered a curse under his breath, checking his ammo. They were pinned down, and he could see no clear escape. The mercenaries kept advancing, their shots getting closer. Vena's hand gripped his arm. Carter, we can't just sit here. We have to do something. I'm open to suggestions, he replied. She looked around, her silver eyes narrowing. There's a narrow tunnel to the left. If we can reach it, we might lose them in the deeper caves. Carter glanced over. The passage she pointed to was barely visible, a dark slit in the rock. It was a risk, but staying put meant certain death. On my count, he said, gripping his rifle tightly. 1, 2, 3. They sprang up, running low and fast. Bolts of plasma flew past them, scorching the walls. Vena ducked into the passage first, and Carter followed, covering her retreat with a few well-placed shots that forced the mercenaries to pause. Inside the narrow tunnel, the darkness swallowed them. The sound of blaster fire faded as the walls closed in. Carter's breathing was heavy, his wounds stinging, but he kept moving. We need a plan, he said once they'd stopped to catch their breath. Vena leaned against the wall, her face set. We can't keep running forever. Selvar won't stop until we're dead. I know, Carter said, thinking fast. But he's got one weakness. He's arrogant. If we can outsmart him, get him alone. Vena's eyes widened. You want to take him out? Carter nodded. Without Selvar, the mercenaries will lose their nerve. They're loyal to his credits, not his cause. How? Vena asked. He's surrounded by guards. Carter tapped his comm device, hoping it still worked. Zyra, come in. A crackle, then her voice came through. Carter, what's going on? We need a distraction, Carter said quickly. You still in the ship? Yes, but Selvar's forces are tracking me. Perfect, Carter said. Do something big. Draw them away. We'll take care of Selvar. There was a pause, then Zyra's calm voice replied. Understood. Give me 5 minutes. Carter turned to Vena. We get ready. The moment Selvar's alone, we end this. Vena nodded, her expression fierce. Let's finish it. They moved deeper into the caves, setting up an ambush. As they waited, Carter's mind raced. This was their last shot. If they failed, there would be no more running. And Carter never failed when it mattered most. The cave was silent now. The echoes of the fight had faded, leaving only the sound of Carter's heavy breathing and the quiet hum of energy weapons cooling down. Selvar lay motionless on the ground, his golden armor charred and dented. Vena stood over the defeated noble, her blaster still trained on him. Is it over? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Carter nodded, lowering his rifle. It's over. The mercenaries had fled the moment Selvar fell. Without his commanding presence and endless credits, they had no reason to keep fighting. Now it was just the two of them, surrounded by the aftermath of the battle. Vena holstered her weapon and turned to Carter. You look terrible. Carter chuckled, wincing at the pain in his ribs. You're not looking too great yourself. She smiled faintly, but her expression soon turned serious. Carter, if you hadn't been here. I was here, he said, cutting her off. That's all that matters. Before Vena could reply, the faint sound of engines roared overhead. A familiar voice came through their comms. Carter, Vena, I'm above your location. I'm bringing the ship down. It was Zyra. Her voice was calm, but there was relief in it. As they emerged from the cave into the dusty sunlight, they saw Zyra's ship hovering just above the ground. The ramp lowered, and Zyra stepped out, her expression unreadable. Carter sighed. Took you long enough. Zyra crossed her arms. You told me to be a distraction. I was very distracting. Vena laughed, a genuine, clear sound that echoed across the barren landscape. It was the first time she had laughed since the whole ordeal began. As they boarded the ship, Carter sank into one of the seats, finally allowing himself to relax. Zyra stood in front of him, her gaze steady. You've done more than anyone else would have for us, Carter. We owe you. Carter smirked. You paid me, remember? Zyra shook her head. It's more than that. You didn't have to stay, but you did. You could have walked away after the first attack. Instead, you fought for us, saved us. Vena sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She's right. We're still standing because of you. Carter leaned back, his eyelids heavy. Just doing my job. But deep down, he knew it wasn't just a job anymore. He had grown attached to them, to their fierce loyalty to each other, to the way they never gave up, no matter the odds. Zyra spoke again. Carter, we want you to stay. Not just as a bodyguard, as part of our family. He opened his eyes, looking at her and then at Vena. They were serious. Think about it, Zyra added, her voice soft. Carter closed his eyes again, the hint of a smile on his face. He already knew his answer. Days passed since the final battle, but the memories were still fresh. The ship hummed softly as it drifted through the stars. Inside, things were finally calm. Zyra and Vena had retreated to their quarters after a long meeting with their family's advisors. Carter remained in the lounge area, gazing out at the endless expanse of space. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about the next mission. There was no immediate threat, no enemy waiting around the corner. It felt strange, and oddly peaceful. The door behind him hissed open. He didn't turn around. He knew who it was. Vena's voice was light, playful. "You're always staring at the stars. What are you thinking about?" Carter smirked, wondering how much longer I'll get to enjoy the quiet. Vena stepped closer, sitting on the arm of his chair. "You mean before you're dragged into another fight?" "Something like that." Zira entered next, her posture as poised as ever. She looked at Vena, then at Carter. "You're not leaving, are you?" Carter raised an eyebrow. "What makes you think I'm planning to leave?" Zira folded her arms. "Because you're a soldier. You always move on to the next battle." "Maybe I've had enough battles," Carter said, his voice softer. Vena grinned, her silver eyes glinting. "So you're saying you'll stay?" Carter leaned back, his gaze shifting from the stars to the two sisters in front of him. They weren't just his clients anymore. Over the course of their journey, they had become something more. Friends, partners, maybe even family. "I'll stay," he said finally. "For as long as you'll have me." Zira's usually serious expression softened. "Good, because we need someone like you. Not just to protect us, but to keep us grounded." Vena leaned down, resting her head against his shoulder. "You're not just a bodyguard, Carter. You're part of this crew. Part of us." Carter chuckled lightly. "I never thought I'd end up in a situation like this. I came here for a simple job, and now you're stuck with us," Vena said with a smirk. "Guess I am." As the ship drifted through the void, the three of them sat together, the tension and danger of the past weeks finally melting away. Carter didn't know what the future would hold. More challenges would surely come. But for now, he was content. For the first time in years, he had a place to belong.